Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Talkin Ruggers. My name is OJ and I'm your host. You may know me as Level Up Rugby on social media, or you may not know me at all. But regardless, welcome to an all-new rugby podcast. And I know what you're already thinking, not another one. But this podcast is a little different to the usual scorelines being read out from the weekend's results. It's my aim to talk ruggers with everyone involved in the game who isn't a current player, from the content creators and online coaches to business owners and media presenters. Essentially, everyone who's bringing our beloved game into the 21st century. I want to tell you all the stories of those personalities you follow on social and broader media, give you their professional advice on how to start a career in the booming rugby industry, and ultimately put the rugby world to rights. And we start that journey today by talking ruggers with the #1 jersey reseller in the world. Based out of New Zealand, through his content, he has found himself working with industry giants such as Sky Sports, covering the All Blacks games, the Rugby Championship, and even going to the British and Irish Lions Test Tour Series. You may know him as Boomfa Vintage, but today we're talking ruggers with the man behind the brand, Duncan Wood. If you are listening to this podcast right now, which you very clearly are, then you can officially call yourself an original listener. Thank you so much for your support and giving this new podcast a go. I appreciate there's so many out there to pick from now. So thank you so much for your time. I'm going to try and make it as valuable for you as I possibly can. But if you could possibly give me one more minute of your time to go down below, drop a like on this episode, or rate it 5 stars on whatever podcast platform provider you are listening or watching on, then I would greatly appreciate it. And you can also find us at Talkin Ruggers, all one word, on all platforms, to stay up to date with which of the over 100 planned guests I plan to be talking to from week to week. Every Tuesday you can tune in on your commute to training. This podcast is designed for the Tuesday training warriors, those of you who turn up week in, week out, rain or shine, for the club, for the love of the game. I hope you guys enjoy. So without any further ado, let's get straight into the first episode. Thank you. Good morning, Duncan. Let's get straight into it, mate. What does Boomfa Vintage mean to you?
Boomfa Vintage is my business. It's my full-time thing now. So it was a side hustle. It's now what I do every day, which is awesome. And we're a store based here in Auckland, New Zealand, formerly Christchurch. And I operate all online. So there's 800 vintage rugby jerseys, kind of anywhere from the late 80s all the way through till the modern jerseys, all for sale, shipping worldwide. And yeah, we also do some media stuff. So I'm quite prominent on social media and make a lot of content about rugby jerseys and history. And that's Boomfa Vintage.
In a nutshell. I mean, talk about the ultimate side quest. You know, starting by just reselling jerseys and now presenting for the likes of Sky Sports at All Blacks games. It's a phenomenal story. And I want to go right back to the very start. Talk me through your first ever experience with rugby.
So I was born into rugby, really. I was actually born in South Africa, even though I grew up in New Zealand. So my first ever rugby experience was at Kings Park in Durban when I was way too small to remember. But, it was kind of in my blood. And then my first experience playing was when I was 4 years old in Greymouth. It was actually a rugby league match. Greymouth's on the West Coast, kind of a rugby league stronghold. But I played both sports all the way through. So, yeah, it's always been part of my life. I played for, over 20 years. And then now it's my job, which is really quite a privilege. And I feel very lucky to do something that I'm excited to do every day.
Yeah, I mean, that is living the dream, honestly. And what a rugby heritage. They talk about New Zealand versus the All Blacks as being the ultimate test match. And are you torn at all? I mean, Yeah, you can't at all sound like you're from South Africa. You definitely sound like a Kiwi to me. But are you have a torn allegiances in that sense?
No, not really. I'm a Kiwi supporter through and through. My whole worldview is kind of shaped on the West Coast, which is a really rural part of New Zealand. I think if you're in the cities, there's a lot of like expat communities of South Africans, same as in Australia. But Greymouth, there was just us basically. There was like two other families. So I think my parents made an effort to kind of like integrate rather than to be part of the expat community, which has its positives and negatives. Like I don't feel South African, which is, you know, I guess it's still part of my history. But yeah, go the All Blacks, man.
Up the ABs. And also up the Wars. I know you are a
Oh,
massive
was.
Warriors fan. Yeah,
Yeah,
of
man.
course. You've got some pretty cool jerseys from them, which we'll get into a little bit later on. But talk me through that. So you moved over to New Zealand at a young age, as we can tell from your accent. You may not feel South African, but you definitely don't sound South African. That's for
No,
sure.
definitely not.
Talk me through
Definitely
what it's
not.
like to grow up playing rugby in New Zealand.
I mean, rugby permeates across like the entire society. I think maybe New Zealand, Wales, and South Africa are probably unique in that rugby is the number one sport. England, obviously, football's number one. Australia,
Yeah.
they've got cricket, they've got Aussie rules, they've got rugby league. Um, rugby league is big here as well, but the All Blacks dominate the headlines. We all dream of being All Blacks growing up. There are even a few rugby league players who have made the switch because that was their childhood dream, like Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. But yeah, it's just part of the culture, like the community. I think it's maybe changing a bit now, but definitely when I was a kid in my small community, like daily life revolved around the rugby club and getting ready for the weekend if there's a big game on, and your weekend kind of was centered around that fixture. So I remember being a ball boy as a kid and just looking forward to that. I'd play my game in the morning and then go and ball boy the seniors in the afternoon, and that was just like, yeah, it's the highlight of my week every week. And then throughout summer, you're just looking forward for rugby season to roll back around, and it's what you talk about with your mates when you go to high school every lunchtime and every tea break. So yeah, it's a big part of life here, I think.
I mean, it's a lifestyle out there. It's not just a sport. It's not even just a game, as we say over in the UK. It's a whole way of living. I think that's what we look at. Because I'm an Englishman, if you can already tell, living over in Australia currently. So I'm learning a little bit about sporting life over here as well. But from what I hear, it's like a mythical, mystic place over there. The rugby is just in the blood, in the veins. Talk about all the way through from schoolboy level all the way up to the ABs. There's a clear pathway there, and it's fascinating to see how that balances between the All Blacks and what are the rugby league team called?
The Kiwis,
Oh, that makes a whole lot of sense. There
that's the
you go.
one.
Pretty simple as that. Are you a Kiwis fan as well as an All Blacks fan?
Oh, of course. I support any team in black and white. I mean, not Newcastle United, but any team that's
Yeah.
representing any team that's got the New Zealand fern on it.
Too right. And speaking of which, you mentioned about rugby, the All Blacks stealing the headlines a lot, but you talk about, let me go from the top on that. You speak about the All Blacks stealing headlines, especially over in NZ, and you're supporting any team that wears the fern. Recently, controversially, with the Women's World Cup on, I've seen a lot of people talking about the women's game not getting enough exposure, which we could definitely delve into a little bit more depth later on. Of course, you're a fan of them. I know that you love
Yeah,
the
of
women's
course.
game as well. What do you think about that in terms of the exposure they're getting over in NZ?
It's definitely improving. I mean, to say that there was equal exposure of the women's and men's games would be a lie, because there isn't. But there's so much more than there was a few years ago. So that's really encouraging to see. And even more broadly, like obviously I've got an apparel mindset. You couldn't even buy a Black Ferns jersey in 2019. And the last World Cup was in New Zealand. You couldn't like buy them in the stores. And this time around, they've made an amazing jersey release. You can buy them in most stores now, which is great to see. I think the time zone of the Women's World Cup has made it challenging. Like all the games have been, the best time for New Zealand is either midnight till 2 a.m. or a.m. till 7:30. And yeah, but I think the country is getting behind them as much as we can. We're recording this just before the semi-final of the World Cup, so Canada versus Black Ferns this weekend. So yeah, I feel like we're now at the business end. These are the two games that we've all been building up to, because for better or for worse, like the Women's World Cup, we kind of knew who would get to this stage, and maybe one team was in question. But yeah, I think that the country is really going to rally behind the girls this weekend.
Too right. Hoorah. Honestly, the women's
And
game is
especially
growing
after we
so
got
much.
walloped by the Box, we need some good news.
Oh, for sure. That was, yeah, not exactly expected in the rugby championship, that is.
No,
But
awful.
yeah, it's good to see the women's carrying the flag
Yeah,
for the.
but also great to see the women Box putting up a great performance and like really pushing us. We won comfortably in the end, but 10 all at half time. I've lost your audio, bro. Dead mic.
Hello? Yeah.
We're
Well,
back.
all the technical issues you could ever have.
Good learnings. Write
Oh,
them all
too
down.
right. Too right. Continuing on.
Yeah.
I did hear someone suggest recently the idea of having a combined men's and women's aggregate scoreline across rugby. And if that was the case, I regrettably inform you that the All Blacks, after they got absolutely trounced by the Bok, would actually be across the two games losing by about 4 points, apparently, to the Boks.
We would have. And England would be pretty strong in that case.
I mean, you didn't have to tell me that to know that for sure. Our aggregate scoreline in the whole World Cup. Oh, that's
I
a
guess the
completely
good thing about
different.
that
Yeah.
idea is it would encourage investment and like making your women's team strong, right?
Too right. And I mean, that's something that's been really highlighted across the World Cup, the Women's World Cup, at least over the last few weeks or so, is the golfing class between the professional teams and the amateur teams, and the availability of money to make the world go round, as it suggests. I mean, I did some analysis on the Red Roses' score against Samoa, for example, and my comment section was littered with, yeah, but they're playing against amateurs, mate. And I'm like, yeah, it does look like somewhat of a team run, but as you suggested, the women's game is growing. And to get us back on theme of jerseys, I saw you recently went to the All Blacks experience and got a jersey for you and your partner. Talk me through that. That looked well fun.
Oh, mate, the Black Ferns jersey for this World Cup is exceptional. It's like one of the best New Zealand rugby jerseys of all time, I think. But yeah, that was a little collab that we did. So the All Blacks experience it's at the Sky Tower, which is like this big building in Auckland, the big needle-looking building in the middle of the city. And it's really cool. You can go in there and it's like, the best way I can describe it is like a theme park for All Blacks fans. Kind of takes you through the history, like you walk through the experience and you see there's a lot of VR stuff going on, some games, and you get like a virtual haka as well. So yeah, they have a store at the end, and they did some jersey personalizing, and I got one for my partner Liv. So that was cool.
It is a pretty cool jersey, I'll tell you that much. And it just sort of highlights the evolution of businesses. I mean, first and foremost, you're a jersey reseller. That is the core of what you do. Without that, I don't know if there would be a Boomfa Vintage. But of course, it now highlights the fact that you've actually progressed beyond that. You've grown beyond just being a jersey reseller into the media world. I mean, you've worked with Sky Sports. Talk me through how that came about, how you've gone from just being a jersey reseller. We'll get into the details of that a little later on. But
Yeah,
how
cool.
have you progressed into this social media and now just mainstream media world?
It wasn't by design. It wasn't by design for sure. I was very hesitant to put myself on camera. Like early on in the business. So to give you a rough timeline, like 2021 was when it started. I think late 2022 was about when Instagram started. Basically, if you weren't making video content, like you weren't reaching anyone. So initially, all I did was put the photos of the jerseys on the website. Sorry, on Instagram, and I didn't have a website at this stage. And people would message me, and you know, the price would be there. And it's like, hey man, keen to buy it. They'd send me the money. I'd send them the jersey. Great. And that was working really well. And then I think I had like 4,500 followers or so, and I'd reach most of them every time I posted because people were engaged. But then all of a sudden, I just lost all my reach pretty much overnight. And I'd reach my core, like my core people with a photo post, but not the wider audience. And so I did some research and I was like, well, I'm going to have to start making videos. So if you look way back on my profile, like the first one, just some backing music and like me holding, I think like I had 20 jerseys for sale at the time, and I was like dropping 1, 2, 3 so I could see all of them. And it was like kind of fumbling around, and I'd sped the video up. And that was like my first piece of content with like me on the camera. And I was super nervous to put it out. And I was scared, like, oh, what are people going to think? Like, I'm working in corporate sales. Is this like going to affect my reputation in business? What are my friends going to think? But as you get over yourself and as you put yourself out, there's always going to be a few people who are like, oh, that's stupid, and maybe talking behind your back. But the majority of people are really supportive and get around you, and especially like your true friends are the ones who are like, man, good on you for getting out there and giving it a crack. They might crack the odd joke, but in general, they're actually like right behind what you do. So that gave me some confidence, and it started to grow the following. And then I started to be like, hold on, people are, I've actually accumulated some knowledge now, time to share it. And so that was kind of what I started to do. I'd tell a story about a jersey or a little bit of history behind something that was for sale, and that really resonated with people. And then I was like, well, I can't keep up with the with kind of messaging and stuff, so I made the website. And then I guess to fully answer the question, how did I get into mainstream media? That wasn't something that I put on my goal setting for 2024 either, or it's more been this year, 2025. But I think as my focus on content has been, it's been a real core pillar of the business really the last 18 months, is like, that's how I do my marketing. So I've had to improve how I present on camera. I've improved my editing skills, and that's quite a skill set within itself, like being able to script something, to be able to shoot it, to be able to edit it in a way that's professional and grabs people's attention. And so I've been really lucky, made some connections at Sky Sport, who saw the kind of synergy, to use a business term, between our brands, and kind of a lot of the people that interested in my content are the people who they would like to have subscribe to Sky Sport and watch more sports. So kind of we started talking, and then an opportunity came up. They were looking for their first social first, is what they call it. So everything else has been pulling content from their TV shows and repurposing it for social media to broadcast on their channels. And this is their first like social media led, what do I call it, segment. So it's called Extra Time, and we basically debrief the weekend of sports and then preview it on Thursday. And there's a commercial sponsor there, so they make money through the commercial sponsor. I get like a fee for each time because I've got to script it and film it, and it takes quite a bit of time each week. But that was very unexpected. It wasn't something that I was like aiming to do this year, and I really enjoy it, and I'd like to do more things like that in future as the media world shifts towards our platforms.
100%. You have just completely summarized the social media journey. And it sounds like the happiest of accidents for you to fall into a role with such a big name at Sky Sports. But you start off, as everyone does, the rite of passage, if you will, the embarrassment of posting your first video on social media, because that is what social media rewards nowadays. The whole algorithm is oriented around reach and accessing new people rather than your organic original audience. As you found with your business, like all you need is a small select group of people to essentially keep on buying from yourself. And that's where that 4,000 followers is really valuable. But now it's all about, at least on social media, being seen by new audiences. And I think that ties in nicely to your business, because I don't even know what jerseys are out there. I don't know how cool they are. Like, I can see this delightful Fijian jersey, is it?
Oh, this one on me.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is the 98, 99 Fiji training jerseys. That's the Fijian flag for people who don't know.
You see,
We've
I
got
don't even know such a thing exists. And I
the
feel like
Fiji
a lot of
rugby
people out
crest
there,
there.
people don't know what's actually available to them. You can see all these beautiful works of art almost behind you.
There's a
And it's just,
94 Warriors jersey, an 05 Lions for those who celebrate.
there's some jerseys that are just like, they don't need to be too well designed, I suppose, to just carry that heritage with them. But
Yeah,
like you're saying,
exactly.
the social media journey is a way to market yourself, and you begin to realize that even though you are a jersey reseller, that is the core of your business. I don't know what the percentage of time you spend doing that aspect of it is, but you spend a lot more of your time actually marketing yourself and being seen by the people. And that's led to some pretty cool opportunities for you, which is honestly great to see, because your personal brand has therefore developed beyond just for vintage. Like, people will come up to you and know you as that, but they'll see your face first and foremost, which is pretty cool. I mean, as someone who
Yeah.
just wanted to sell some jerseys, like, that's a pretty cool way to go about things. And Yeah, speaking of which, we've just seen some pretty cool jerseys. You got to tell me, what is your favorite? Or give me, and I know that might be quite tough to answer, to be
Like
fair,
picking
because
your favorite child. Not that I
yeah,
have any children.
give me top 5 jerseys, the top 5 jerseys in the rugby world ever. Go.
Top 5. I'm going to go it's my personal biased view. So I'm going to pick teams that I like.
You are the bloke, of course, though. So you are
Yeah,
the one
yeah.
in the know.
So
So
for me, I'm a Crusaders, Warriors, and All Blacks fan. I'm from the West Coast of New Zealand. I'm going to go Warriors 95. It's white. They just made a remake of it recently. It's pretty similar to this one here that I showed you before, but it's like the reverse colorway, all cotton, made by Canterbury, New Zealand. Awesome. The Crusaders 97 to 99 jersey. It's the Temex fabric like this and has the sword tips coming down. All Blacks Steinlager 94 to 98. All Blacks crest on one, Steinlager on the other, Canterbury of New Zealand logo here. A province, the West Coast. So it's a small province, like sub-union of Canterbury. Sorry, not sub-union. It is a rugby union. That's a technical term for Kiwis. The West Coast jerseys of like the early 2000s when I was a kid. So that's 4. And then I'll go for a Fiji, you know, one of the, not this specific one, but there's one with like a palm tree up the left side, and that one's pretty sick. So there you go.
works of art. There's 5 beauties, absolute beauties. On the flip side, then, I hear a lot of people nowadays complaining in comment sections of particular brands, some more than others, not to name names, that often appear lazy. They're not putting the effort in. They're not putting the best designers on these projects. And it's a bit more of a copy and paste job. So first and foremost, we won't go for 5. We'll go for 3. Do you have your 3 most hated jerseys of all times? One that you think, oh, that's not really the best looking one in the world. And then following up from that, what do you think about the current affair of jerseys in the rugby space? Because, of course, all these ones you're showing me are historic. They are heritage beauties of jerseys. But in the modern day, I don't know if they're putting the same effort in. What's your take on that?
I think there's a real pressure now to like crank out a lot of jerseys every year. Whereas back in the day, like that Crusaders jersey I mentioned, they had it for 3 years. And they had an away jersey they wore like twice. Like they just had one jersey for 3 years, whereas now the Crusaders might cycle through like 8 or 9 or 10 jerseys in 3 years. So the designers have got to, the brands just got to keep on cranking out designs. And I think there's probably more people on the like operations side than maybe the creative side. So there's a lot of pressure on those few creative people in the business to keep on producing designs. So maybe that plays into it. In terms of 3 worst jerseys of all time, I mean, some of them are iconic now. Like there's this horrifically designed, well, I don't know if it's either horrific or terrific. It's somewhere in between. This Canadian 95 World Cup jersey. And it looks like Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, but a rugby jersey. It's like got maple leaves of all the colors of the rainbow all over it, just kind of chucked everywhere. And I've got one and they're incredible. I could go and get it later. But yeah, it's kind of hideous, but also amazing. What else? The Highlanders had a similar one. The team from Otago down south here, bright highlighter green.
I know the one you're talking about. I've seen Lima Sopawonga doing a over-the-head bicycle kick in that, I think.
Yeah, that's an unbelievable highlight. But it's, again, at the time it was like shocking, and looking back, there's a bit of fondness there. People still like to buy those ones.
Cyclical fashion. It comes back round eventually.
And then there's a Newcastle Knights who are an NRL team, and they're from like a coal mining part of the country, like very industrial. And they had one, it's kind of cool, but also kind of hideous. They do it every year now. And it's like, you know, the construction workers kind of outfit with the bright orange, and it's got like reflective bits on the front and up here.
Yep.
It's like that, but a rugby jersey.
Wow.
Again, kind of hideous, but kind of awesome.
Yeah, iconic in some ways. I'm sure someone's going to absolutely love that and feel represented by it.
Exactly. And they still sell a few of them. So,
oh, well, it is fascinating, I suppose, unknown logistical side of things. I don't know whether you have much insight into this, but how much does finances in terms of printing a real technicolor fancy jersey have compared to, I think back to, for example, Under Armour? Back around the 2015 World Cup. If you know, you know. Georgia, Wales, Wasps, three off the top of my head, who literally had the exact same jersey. They just copied and pasted it, edited the colors around on it, and had the same thing. Is that more of a business decision based on numbers, or is it a design thing? Like, what would you put that down to?
I think times have changed a bit recently with jersey design, because with the advance in like polyester technology, you can basically, like, are you aware of what sublimation is versus printing?
Let's pretend that the audience doesn't know. I definitely know, of course, what that is.
So
Sublimation.
to print is like, this here is printed, right? So you
Yeah.
can see there's fabric and then there is vinyl on top that's been heat pressed on. So names on the back of jerseys are usually printed on because they'll be done the week of the test, who Finn Russell's playing 10. Russell on the back. If he gets pulled out last minute, they're going to pull in Marcus Smith and put him on the Lions jersey, So that'll be printed on. Sublimation is when they kind of design it into the jersey. So this is actually woven, but like the polyester creates the designs. They have different color threads for different parts of the jersey. So now that technology is really advanced and they can pretty much do anything with any jersey. So that's why you go to these sevens tournaments and you see some team called like Bark FC and it'll be someone's dog like on the front, because I can just send a photo to Samurai and Samurai will put that Labrador on the front of that team's jersey or whatever. And they can do it really cheaply now, whereas back in the day, before the computer systems weren't like as malleable and as complex, like they would have had to design this with, it would have been quite a lot of coding and quite a lot of stuff on the back end to create that design and like put it into the computer and then like sync up the textile machines to create that sublimated design. Yeah, that's a very long-winded and technical answer to your question, but more recently it has become much easier and much cheaper to produce on small scale a variety of designs. Where I think even 2015, I know definitely back to like 2005, Canterbury of New Zealand would have pretty much the same template for every team in the world. And I think back to the teardrop collar jersey, people will know what I'm talking about, from like 2007 to 2011 or so, maybe 2010. I don't think it was in that 2011 World Cup. But if you think back to the South Africa World Cup winning jersey, there was a collar, it was kind of like scoop neck and kind of came across like this, looked like a teardrop across the front. And then they had these lines like that kind of made the players look a bit like superheroes with six packs. Ireland had the same design, different colors. Australia had the same design, different colors. South Africa and a few others that I might have forgotten. But yeah, so I think that's maybe what's driven that shift. But I think, to answer your question about 2015 Under Armour, that template was actually quite cool. And there were a lot of panels and there was a lot of detail and I quite liked it. But more recently, we've moved towards, these very unique jerseys for each team. And they might have the same base, like the same shape, but then different designs. For example, like the Indigenous designs on the Wallabies jersey, that would have been, in the recent Lions series, that would have been so expensive to produce back in 2006, 2007.
You are a top nose, mate. You love the craft. I can't believe you have so much knowledge about all these details, and we're getting pretty nosy into those details, which I'm absolutely loving. But I also want to delve a little bit more into your passion around the jerseys and talk into like how you first got into this space. Of course, you've got a wealth of knowledge now, not only in social media, marketing, you have your business background. Of course, you have to understand logistics and all that sort of thing. But where did the passion come from for you in terms of getting into jerseys? I briefly interrupt this podcast episode to let you know that this podcast has been brought to you by potentially your business. That's right, we're on the hunt for some sponsorship to keep this ship afloat. So if you or you know anyone who is interested in sponsoring a podcast full of dedicated, passionate rugby noses, direct access to them on a weekly basis and through social media channels, then just drop us a message at Talkin Ruggers on Instagram and we can hopefully begin some conversations from there, because right now I'm dead broke. Anyway, regardless, back to the episode.
Before I dive into it, I'm going to also say that there are people who are far, I might have Boomfa and I might be one of the larger resellers in the world, but there are people out there who have far more knowledge than me and I learn from all the time. So there are people in the rugby jersey collectors community who are like unbelievable and will know from a tag what year something, they know that's like the 1962 Wales jersey, and that's the one that they used in New Zealand because it was made in Australia, not in the UK. And there's a guy from my hometown called Adam Gilshan, and he's just like unbelievable in terms of what he knows, especially with those early like 50s to 70s jerseys. It's just like crazy. But anyway, I'm going back to how I got the passion. I think I was at uni. I just liked jersey design. I didn't really have a creative outlet. I played a bit of guitar, but I didn't consider myself like into fashion. I didn't consider myself an artist or a creative person. I was good at calculus and maths, and I did economics, and that was my thing. But I liked jersey design, and maybe it was a safe outlet for like creativity. And I would really look forward to when the jerseys came out each year. And then I kind of started, me and my mate got really into looking on Trade Me, which is our version of eBay, would look for like the Crusaders jerseys because we were both massive Crusaders fans. And we'd try and find the ones from when we were kids, and we like couldn't afford them because we were broke uni students, and every spare penny went towards bars and liquor stores, which was a great thing. But that's kind of where it started. So it was more of like, wow, I'm interested in this, but I can't afford it. And then, I went and played rugby in the States for a little while. I came back, I played rugby here. And then eventually I was working in sales, as I said before, and finally had a bit of disposable income. And I was like, oh shit, I can actually afford to buy some jerseys. So I went on Trade Me, and instead of just looking at them, I was like, oh, I can actually buy this. Cool. And then I found it was cheaper to buy in 5s and 6s and 10s and, these bigger lots. And I could maybe, if I spent $500 on 10 jerseys and I kept the one that I wanted, I might be able to sell them for 500 and get them on for free. So that's kind of how it all started.
Wowza, the ultimate side hustle. That is such a university story, trying to afford your beers on the weekend by selling these jerseys. That is hilarious. But yeah, I suppose it comes from the passion for it. I think a lot of people have that, and that's why we're seeing a lot of these jersey resellers start to pop up all over the place.
Yeah, I think it
But
takes people back to like a simpler time as well,
yeah, no, too
Not
right.
so much as in the world's so complicated. I mean, it is in some senses, but just on a personal level, when you're a kid and all you think about is your game on the weekend and who the Crusaders are playing or who England are playing or the Wasps or whoever your team is, it was a pretty simple life being a kid. There are many, many simple joys. And so when you see that jersey that you idolized, Andrew Murdens or Dan Carter, and you saw them playing in it, and then you can own one and put it on yourself now, it like takes you back to that simple time.
Too right. Yeah, 100%. You used to see these kits on TV and you'd be like, oh, I want to wear those. I always think back to must have been like 2012, and England had this alternate jersey. It was purple with
Oh yeah, I
gold
remember the one.
lining.
Yeah.
What a beauty. I always thought, oh, I want that. My favorite color is purple. So I was like, oh, this is spot on for me. And it's just that absolute passion and desire, which I think is coming back round into the game, which is great to see. As my parents were like, that's hideous. We're not getting you that one. Don't worry. But I always thought that was an absolute work of art. And yeah, you look back in time and there's so many of those jerseys about that just, like you say, bring back the feel good factor towards rugby, turning up in your cool jersey. I used to want to get my name printed on the back of mine all the time. It's just, yeah, that childhood love for the game, I suppose.
Well, now I know to keep an eye out for one of those in a size large, eh?
Oh, mate, might be XL if you're not too careful, but yeah, by this point. But
Yeah.
yeah, well, if you ever find one, let me know because, yeah, that would be pretty cool. I've always admired those
That's
ones. I've
great.
never got
Yeah.
my hand on them.
I remember exactly the one you're talking about. I think it came after their all black away one, which drew some criticism in the
Oh,
New
yeah,
Zealand circles
you're
in
right. Of course you're right. Of
2011.
course you know your jerseys. Yeah, it did indeed. Yeah. All right. So we've delved into who you are, your story a little bit more, but I want to try and help those out there who are interested in the jersey reselling space, not to give away all your secrets, but to talk through how someone might first get started into this space and some of the difficulties that you've faced along the way that people might not at first be aware of. Like we mentioned how a lot of your job might now actually be spent doing marketing rather than the jersey reselling. But what are some other things that people don't realize are difficult? And how would you advise first getting started?
The most difficult thing is building an audience to sell your stuff to, really. Because, I mean, you can use the likes of, I guess it depends what you want to do. A lot of people will just sell stuff on eBay or on Trade Me or whatever, especially people who go to the thrift stores. I buy from a lot of those people as well. So that's one way to do it. You pick them up online and then you sell them to someone like me and I've got a lot of people who I pay a lot of money out to on a monthly basis, because they give me good jerseys and I can sell them on. If you're interested in building a brand, that's a whole different thing, right? And that doesn't actually apply necessarily to rugby jerseys or vintage clothing or anything. It's just like any product you want to sell, you need to have a brand that is A, recognizable, and B, trusted, I think is a big one. Regardless of what you're selling, especially with vintage clothing, because it's so variable. Like I can show you, for example, on this jersey, there's a faded collar and there's a mark on the back. So if someone were to buy that and I said, hey, this is in mint condition, oh, and the button's missing, how about that? If I say, hey, that's in mint condition, and they pay $500 for it, which is around what it's worth if it's in mint condition, then it turns up and it's not, then they're going to go around and say, hey, Duncan's a real asshole and he sold me this jersey for $500 and it's got a big paint splotch on the back. So if you're looking to get into vintage clothing, be really honest about what you're selling. Take photos of all the flaws, and I think that's just right for anything. And if you mess up, it's okay. Like just address it, be honest, and make it right. So there's been plenty of times when I've sent something out. I won't say plenty. There's been a handful of occasions where I've sent something out. The customer's been really disappointed because I might have missed something. Like, hey, there's a small hole in the bottom of the jersey, and you said it was in perfect condition. Really sorry. I can either give you $50 in refund or just send it back and I'll refund for the whole thing. So I think, whatever you're getting into, integrity is really important. Building trust, building brand, and then what was the other thing I said? Just getting started, I think.
Just cracking on. I think that's an important lesson in business. I remember when I was studying it at school, you learn that the majority of your sales come from repeat custom. You want to keep that good relationship, as you said, with your organic 4,000 people, as it was, which is a shed load of people if you think about them in a room to begin with. If they're all to buy one jersey, that's a whole lot of money coming your way. But most importantly is that relationship. I think that's the core of your business, is a passion for the game, a passion for these essentially works of art, because in this space, the clothing, there isn't just the utilitarian value of it covering your body. There's this hedonic value of it expressing your personality, expressing your passion. If I see someone wearing a cool jersey, it tells me something about them. Might not just be where they're from and who they support, but they have an interest and a passion for these certain things. And you want to keep those people on side. And honesty is the most important thing in that relationship that you're building with those people.
That actually brings one other thing, what you mentioned. So like a real challenge is two jerseys can look almost identical and have, like, one could be worth $70 or $30 or be worthless, and the other one could be worth $1,000. It's like you can only learn. Like, for example, I had this one Hawke's Bay jersey, and I had a look at it, and I was like, man, this thing's beaten up. There's like marks and stains, and it's really thin. Sure, there's a number on the back, but it's in terrible condition. But I can see it's old, so I'll put it up for 150 New Zealand dollars, which is like £70. Sold immediately to another reseller, who then sold it for $800.
You're
So
joking.
you learn some lessons early on of like what's valuable and what's not, and sometimes you learn it the hard way.
Yeah, I mean, there's no greater lesson than losing out on that kind of bargain.
Yeah,
Goodness.
exactly.
Has that happened a lot for you, or would you say now that are you pretty well educated in the jersey space? Do you know what you're looking at? It's like art now. You've got to suss these things out. It must be difficult from afar, especially over a phone.
Yeah, I mean, that's the majority of my like ability now, is to be able to spot the value of a jersey and whether I'm paying the right price for it to sell it for more, or whether I'm not. And also, like, it's good to pay the people who are selling it to you like a fair price, because if they had the experience that I had with this guy, you're like, oh, that's a bit sad,
Yeah.
Whereas if you're like, hey, look, these are great jerseys, and you've got it listed for $200, but I can actually pay you $400, and then they come back to you in the future when they find more jerseys, because they're like, whoa, that was worth way more, and he told me about it. So that's part of the kind of integrity aspect.
Yeah, good on you. Not trying to take
But yeah,
advantage of anyone.
that's a real trap you can fall into as well, because you can be like, whoa, that is that jersey that's worth $500, and then you buy it, and then it turns up and it might be fake, or it might be a slightly different year or a slightly different variant, and then you've kind of put some cash into it, and it's not actually worth what you thought it was.
I suppose it does work both ways, isn't it? That word of karma comes up, and you're like, if you try and take advantage of someone else, you could very easily be taking advantage of yourself in this this business in terms of
Yeah, for
like trying
sure.
to get good finds. Is that how you operate then? Do you buy individual jerseys and try and flip them, or do you go? I know that some people buy them in bulk. They'll just buy a bag of jerseys and then just see what comes in that bag. It's almost like a lottery in that sense. How do you work?
Yeah, a bit of both. It's called hand picked when you like pick individual jerseys out.
Okay,
So I have
terminology.
it's like vintage terminology. I have some suppliers who I choose everything individually from. And in New Zealand, that, the bag getting ripped open, that doesn't really exist. So I get a lot of stuff from collectors here in New Zealand. So a lot of my higher end stuff, I might pay like $2,000 for 5 jerseys. So I might be able to resell them for $600 per jersey, but for that seller, instead of having to sell them each individually, find 5 different buyers who are willing to pay that much. They can just go they might be a busy person who has their own life or kids or whatever, and they're like, sweet, $2,000 cash in hand, no worries about like taking photos or taking heaps of detailed photos, and then I just buy them off them and resell them. And then I've gotten more into the kind of big box vintage stuff recently, and that's really good for volume. Getting it from there's like this global secondhand clothing supply chain, which is quite fascinating the more you learn about it. Basically, all the clothes from the UK, Europe, New Zealand, Australia, the US, like these mega economic powerhouses. You think about how many clothes would enter a Rebel Sport as the sports retailer here in New Zealand, the big one, and maybe like JD in the UK,
Sports Direct.
Sports Direct. You think about the boxes and boxes of new kit that they get every day, and that doesn't stay on people's shelves, or it doesn't, sorry, not in it doesn't stay in their wardrobes. They get rid of it. And it all goes to op shops, and it doesn't get bought by British people all the time, or Aussies or Kiwis. Sometimes it has to be like they've got too much and they ship it off overseas and it gets sorted over there. So there's this huge, it's almost like a waste stream for big economies to send out container loads and pallet loads of secondhand clothing where it gets sorted and then sold back to us a lot of the time. And the kind of lower value stuff stays in those regions like India, Pakistan, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe. So it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, it's crazy to think we're just talking about rugby jerseys here, but there's a whole globalization issue going on here of the world of fast fashion, upscaling, upcycling, clothing. And well, the sounds of things, you're giving things a second home, you're giving it a second chance. Of course, if you can be that middleman who can find those valuable items and redistribute them, that's
Yep.
brilliant. But it sounds like, that the world of fast fashion, without getting too political, we want to keep this pretty light-hearted, but it sounds like a miserable old place. Goodness.
Yeah. Well, I have a philosophy that there are enough clothes in the world now to clothe everyone, probably for a long time.
Probably.
It's probably not the main mission of Boomfa Vintage. Like I'd be lying if, recycling clothes was my number one priority. It's definitely an aspect of it, and it makes me happy to know that I do give a lot of clothes that would otherwise just be overseas and maybe be not being worn with the pride that they deserve, ending up on the backs of people who really want them.
Hoorah. I'm here for that, mate. 100%. That's brilliant. And it's a interesting world we live in with the economy of clothing. But without getting
For
too
sure.
miserable about things, without putting a down on stuff, I want to switch over to the problems of rugby. We've spoken about who you are, we've spoken about what you do and how other people can get into it. But let's take a gander at the rugby world, the world we love, our beloved game, and
Let's do
talk
it.
about your perspective on how we can save it. We interrupt this episode again just to remind you that my mission as a whole with Level Up Rugby, Talkin Ruggers, Nudge Rugby, the app, and Rugby with OJ is to grow the game. That's all I care about, is helping grow it, and I don't want you guys to have to pay for it. I'm not looking to put any of my content behind a paywall in any which way, but I do kind of need to eat and survive. So my mission is to get the corporates to pay for it rather than you individuals having to go through a paywall. It's just through the corporations that keep us afloat and allow us to put this content out for free for you guys. So if you know anyone who is interested in sponsoring a podcast and having direct access to a dedicated group of rugby noses, then just drop us a message at Talkin Ruggers on Instagram, and we can hopefully begin a conversation from there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate your support. Back on with the episode. Not to say that it's really broken right now. I think the women's game is doing wonderful things. You only have to look as far as Apple, for example, who have used the women's game specifically to advertise the new iPhone and the recording features that it has, which I find fascinating how
You're an
it
Apple
possibly...
nerd too, right?
I love my Apple products. If you couldn't already tell, I've got everything that I could ever need. But I just found it fascinating how, like, the idea dawned on me that rugby could become a women's sport first. You know, it's a long way off, don't get me wrong. And we spoke previously about the growth of the game in the women's space, which is definitely growing. Like, I now know the names of players. I now think they're pretty cool. I can't lie. I've spoken in the past about how they had the landscape over there to actually have such creative freedom and flexibility to create content that potentially pisses some people off. They think it's cringe. They think it's not what the game needs, but it definitely entices the younger audience, the people who we really need to get into the game, especially over here. It's a bit of an issue in the UK at Twickenham with the prices of tickets and whatnot going up. Kids can't just get into games too easily. It's a chinos world. You see a sea of red chinos over at Twickenham nowadays, which again, the game needs money, it needs corporate financial investment. So it's a headache to try and resolve, but I suppose that's what we're here to do. But getting the younger generation involved, especially through these jerseys you're doing. But broadly speaking then, do you have any sort of creative ideas that you think rugby could be doing to take itself forward into the 21st?
It's a good question. I think to take it forward, we got to look back.
Here we go.
I reckon what makes rugby special is that community aspect that I described of my childhood, of like the club room and sharing a meal after the game and having role models who you looked up to as a kid. And I think it's really difficult now because people are more busy and life's faster and there's all this digital noise. But the reason people love rugby so much is because it like formed such a big part of their childhood. So I think at the club level is where we actually need to invest, and we need to give clubs the ability to host. Because you think about, I think of the club room, I don't know what it's like in the UK, and I can only speak from a New Zealand perspective, but the club rooms were such nice spaces. They're gathering spaces here in New Zealand. And yeah, so many fun conversations and meals and like formative experiences that I had. And I think that's rugby to me, you know? How do we bring that into the 21st century? Is that the RFU or the New Zealand Rugby Union, you know, buying or giving grants out to clubs to foster that space? Is it investing in coaches and referees to, you know, because a lot of all the referees in New Zealand are unpaid, for example, and a lot of them want it to be that way, but is it investing in their education? Is it, you know, providing like meals, stipends? I think it's at the grassroots level, and you're only going to make people passionate by providing that experience when they're young.
100%. What I think you're saying is a metaphor for the game as a whole. In rugby, you got to pass backwards to go forward. Sometimes you have to look backwards to your roots, to your heritage. And I feel like rugby's let a few of those things go for the better. You know, we've evolved as a game, as a sport as a whole. But there's certain things back then, as we mentioned with the cyclical nature of fashion, that have come back into fashion. We look at the vintage jerseys, as that's why I was so excited to talk to you in the first place, because there's a resurgence of these old vintage jerseys. You see tennis players, other sporting athletes now wearing these rugby jerseys. And it's not like, oh yeah, that's just called a rugby jersey because that's the name of it. It's called a rugby jersey after rugby jerseys. It's where their heritage come from. And that's what's so cool about the game. That's what I try and hold on to in everything that I do in rugby is, yes, move forwards into the 21st century. But sometimes the things you're holding on to aren't holding you back. They're just springboarding you forwards. And if we can leverage those passionate people who still exist in the game, who love rugby for what it is, especially around those vintage elements like the old school jerseys, as you seem to have such a passion for yourself, I think that's a route into the future in combination with all the social elements that are going on at the moment. You only have to look so far as the Red Roses, who, for
For sure.
a synopsis of this, are making rugby cool again.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think my overall point is like the commercial side. It's maybe not my strong point of what's the global strategy for rugby, but I think we can't get lost in the flashy lights of corporate money and social media and chasing big sponsors if it's going to put at risk like the core values, which are community. It's shaking your opponent's hand after the game. It's having them over for a meal. Do they do that in the UK? Like, do you sit down like after our premier matches in New Zealand? You would always share a meal with the opponent.
It's going out of the game slowly.
Yeah,
I think,
people are leaving like the aftermatch early,
yeah,
and
honestly,
that actually affects like the fabric of the game. And I think if we keep that in, the rest of the things will like sort themselves out because we'll be keeping that engaged nucleus of fans. At the end of the day, the corporate money at the top and the social media money that gets invested, if there aren't eyeballs on it and there isn't respect between fans and respects of the officials and respect of the game and like what we're about, then all that other stuff doesn't matter.
I'm with you on that. And I think people have so many competing priorities nowadays. You go to any local club, the majority of the players have kids to get home to, but also those players have that almost safe space to go and be a rugby lad with the boys. You have your beers after, you have a go at each other, you have to chop a pint. Like, it's what makes rugby rugby. And I think letting that go has sort of taken us away from the roots of the game that we should get back to, in my opinion. And that's why I'm trying to have these conversations, because it's the balance of, yeah, making people want to be involved in rugby over those competing priorities, making that clubhouse that fun place to be like it used to be.
Although I think I'll challenge that view slightly because I think, don't get me wrong, I love a beer. And sometimes that's what you need to do. But there's also a space in which you can like bring your kids. Like if it's a nice place to be and like partners and kids want to be there, and it's not a space where it's all just like lads, lads, lads. Because I think that's what's changing. But if we can keep the community and the respect, because that's what it was, right? It was like we all come together, we beat ourselves up for 80 minutes, then we like have a beer together and we look each other in the eye and we're actually all just good mates until next time we play each other.
Yeah.
But if we can evolve that, like those core values and bring them into, the new inclusive values of rugby. Because when I played premiers, what was it? I stopped in 2022, so 3-4 years ago now. We had guys they didn't drink because they were trying to make the Crusaders, so they were super focused on their goals. There are some guys who would maybe take the piss out of them, but they were really strong-willed guys who didn't bend to it, and they're all playing professional rugby now, so good for them. But they still came along and they participated in the like sitting around the table and sharing stories after the game and chatting to the opposition, and that's actually what's important.
Drinking culture is often associated with rugby, for better or for worse, and I think having that inclusive environment is what makes rugby rugby. Like, it's an inclusive sport, all shapes and sizes. I think there's a degree of like, rugby, you have to put your body on the line on the pitch. I feel like some
Oh
people,
yeah,
when they get into that environment after a game, they want to continue that mentality of like, oh, do something weird, do something horrible that you don't really
yeah,
want to do, but we can all laugh about it. And it doesn't always
yeah.
have to involve alcohol. 100% with you on that. I remember when I was at school drinking a gallon of milk,
Oh
like we
yeah, I
weren't, we
remember
weren't
that too.
boozers. And it was like, I don't want to do that. It's different to drinking alcohol, of course. It's a different subject. But I feel that
Yeah,
there's a degree of that without the rowdiness. It's all about balance at the end of the day. You've got to
yeah,
find a
yeah.
bit of this, a bit of that, and that's what's going to carry us forwards.
But like the Gen Z, the kind of younger guys who are coming through, like they don't really put up that they don't drink as much as people our age. I'm 30 and that's what we did when I was at uni, and you had to prove yourself to the older guys, and that was all part of it. And there are great aspects of that. Definitely some team bonding, but I guess it's about keeping those like the things that brought us together and starting to accept a few of the new realities of the next generation.
Yeah. COVID was a turning point, in my opinion. At university, there was still the old generation of people who were pre-COVID, who had a lot of
Yep.
bashing done. And
Yeah.
then for my generation, because of COVID, there weren't the same socials, there weren't the same experiences. And I think it almost bred a softer generation of people who are like, you
Hmm.
know what? I don't want to put up with that. I don't want to have to drink stuff. So you know what? I'm just not going to do that. And then that led to us not bashing the people below us and not bashing the people below them and so on and so
Yeah.
forth. And it sort of changed the rugby landscape, but I think at its core, it should still have those weird things. You know, it doesn't have to go to
Mm.
the far extent that some people who are not involved in rugby think rugby go to.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to go that far. I think a lot of people know what I'm talking about when I say those sorts of things. But yeah, into the future, it's a balance of holding on to what makes rugby rugby whilst bringing it into the 21st century. And I suppose that brings us nicely round, Duncan, to what's your future looking like? What do you want to achieve? What targets have you got? And what have you got coming up?
I think something interesting about Boomfa is that I've never really had, it was never supposed to be my full-time gig, right? So at this point, it's like, hey, this is a bonus. And um, I feel really lucky to do it full-time. And I'm excited to get out of bed every morning and send orders out to customers. And sometimes have to pinch myself that I'm at the British and Irish Lions tour doing some work. It's like pretty cool. So I'd like to do more, just more of the same, really. I'm getting to the point where it's like the packing and sending side of things is a bit much for me. So at the moment, I'm looking for a bit of commercial space, get things a bit, because I'll show you around the room. It's a bit packed and it's just like my spare room at my house. And I'm kind of climbing over boxes. You might have heard something falling over in the background because there's just not enough space in here. So next for me is to find a bit of commercial space, get my like content area kind of set up so I don't have to move stuff around to make content. I've had some ideas around like a YouTube channel and what that could look like, and a bit of rugby history through the lens of the jerseys. So I'm considering that, and then yeah, just kind of increasing. I think most people in New Zealand who are into vintage jerseys have heard of Boomfa, but I think Australia and further abroad, there's still a lot of ground to be kind of made up for me and finding the rugby fans, and hopefully a few of them find Boomfa through this podcast, and then resonate with what I'm talking about, hop on the website and share it with a friend. And that's what it's all about. So yeah, long way of answering your question. I think more stuff in the content space, possibly some YouTube stuff in the new year, and moving into a premises that I can really like focus on business growth and bring in other people to help me out with the more mundane stuff. So I'll just kind of keep riding the wave and we'll see what happens.
The ultimate side hustle, from literal rags of rugby jerseys to riches. That is the plan. Expansion, and of course, Boomfa Vintage. Is it all one word on all platforms?
Boomfa_vintage. I think if you put in Boomfa, there's not, well, Leroy Carter, the newly capped All Blacks Instagram is Boomfa, but it should come up there. We've got 23,500 on Instagram now, almost 10K on TikTok. So if you search Boomfa, Boomfa, it should come up. Otherwise, just go to the website, which is down here, boomfavintage.com, and the links to all of the platforms will be on there.
Yeah, I can't recommend it enough. If you're a rugby nose like me, I love watching the history of Timex come up on my For You page or wherever it happens to come up. So yeah, go drop Duncan a follow. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thanks for coming on, Duncan. I really do appreciate it. You've given some fascinating insight into the world of jerseys. And if you have
My
made it this
pleasure.
far into the episode, guys, please just spend an extra minute, just a minute, to go down and drop a like on this episode or rate us 5 stars on podcast.
This is episode number 1 as well, so I feel very blessed and grateful to be the first of the Talkin Ruggers podcast.
The Talkin Ruggers lads. Well, we're even more
Who
grateful
knows
to
where
have
it'll
you.
go? Exciting times for you, mate.
Final question, Duncan.
One more.
As always, we're going to end every episode with this question. Who would you like to see next on the podcast from the rugby space?
Ooh, it's a good question. Go for Max Brown,
The big dog.
the big dog. I mean, we're hanging out over in Melbourne, having a good time. Maybe he's not number 2, but you'll get him on at some point, I reckon.
We did indeed share a brewski before the Lions Test Tour Series. A fair few beers were consumed, let's say.
He has taken content to the next level well and truly. So it'd be great to hear, or for the audience to hear some of his stories.
Max Brown, we're coming for you. May not be next, but you'll be up at some point, no doubt about it. Thank you so much, Duncan.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for listening.
Hopefully, at some point down the line, we'll reconnect when you've got a team of employees. You have to be not only the marketer, but the HR manager as well. So that's
Absolutely.
hopefully something we'll see in the future. And as for you guys listening at home, as a dedicated listener who's made it all the way to the end of the podcast, I'd love to know who in the rugby community you want me to talk ruggers with next. So leave a comment down below or head over to our social channels at Talkin Ruggers, all one word, on all platforms. We'll see you in the next episode.